Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus and today I'm starting my solo playthrough of EPOS, a Gentes game. Yes, it's a game set in the world of Gentes, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Gentes was or is another well-received game by Stefan Risthaus, who is also the mastermind behind lighter games like Arkwright or Arkwright, the card game that is. No, I'm just kidding here. And Uli from Spielworxx was kind enough to provide me this, let's call it, preview copy of the game. To me, the game already looks pretty final, but some components are still subject to change, and there will be a campaign on GameFound which starts, I believe, on July 23rd. You will find a link to the preview page in the description of this video, but the usual caveat applies here. The final product may or may not look a little bit different to what you see here. EPOS definitely has a lot of similarities to the original Gentes, so if you happen to know Gentes, then a lot of these things will look familiar to you. The teacher action up here, where you can basically train your population, the architect action down here will more or less look familiar to you. A lot of these, let's say, how you are triggering the action. So you may have seen these hourglasses here before. So again, a lot of things will look familiar to you, but if you watched my unboxing video of it, you might have noticed that this game comes with 8 different scenarios that you can kind of add to the game. It's not modular that you can mix and match, from what I understand. You really have to decide which scenario you are playing. You can even play through a campaign game. So this is where the game really will look completely different each time you play the game. This is some of the stuff from the expansion, from the scenarios, and that's not even all. So there is even more to that. There's a backside to this board for one of the scenarios. There are some overlays and whatnot. But again, today I will focus on, let's say, the base game, and in the base game I will focus on the very easy solo challenge. There is not really a AI that comes with the game, so basically you play against yourself. It's not just beat your own score, you also have to achieve certain tasks which you set at the start of each game. For this game, it's again relatively easy. I will want to score 70 points by the end of the game, and I want to score 2 of these bonus markers up here, which you can acquire by building cities, training your population, or building enough of these cards. But I will come to all of these gameplay mechanics. So what you see here is already the setup for the solo mode. I decided to not go with the suggested setup, which means I did some kind of, it's really not a drafting when you play this game alone, obviously, but I had lady luck basically here, so I can't really rely on the preset setup, which typically works pretty well. Also, these neutral colors that you see here, the yellow, the dark gray one, or the black one, and yeah, the light gray one is basically gone. There's a nice, let's say, randomization how you set up the board each time you play the game, so the setup will always look a little bit different. I again already did my setup here, so I started with 2 of my pioneers. This is the current version of my player board, of my civilization board. You get up to 4 of these training steps, 1, 2, 3, and 4, similar to Gentes. This board will look a little bit different. I already have seen, let's say, a slightly updated version, so right now it's not really showing all the professions, so you have to rely on the rules, but again, not a big deal overall. It's dual layered right now, so it definitely does help. These are my 2 starting cards, and that's the main reason why I have set up my populations here. Again, there is a recommended setup which you can go through. In this case, you are typically able to build the 2 starting cards. This time it's not so easy, but again, I want some sort of a challenge at least. And yeah, there's also some mild preparations that you have to do in respect to these 3 Epoch decks here. You remove, I believe, 2 of those, and I think here 6 are getting removed from Epoch 1. In a normal 3 or 4 player game, you are allowed to look at each of these draw piles because there is no real unknown, and it's really a good choice, quite honestly, so that you can really go through what's still in the deck. This is not allowed in the solo game, and from what I've seen, the 2-player mode also doesn't allow that, but I haven't tried a 2-player mode yet, but seems to work quite well there as well. So basically, we are good to go. Again, we are trying to score 70 points and want to collect 2 of these bonus markers. In theory, this can also be these bonus markers. This is more or less of a timer, kind of simulating another player. So if you wait too long for these, let's say, bonus discs from the grab them, you will no longer score. 8 points for them. So basically they will replace the 8 points version once we get into the 5th round of the game. We have 3 epochs here. I think you have already seen that from the card backs. And yeah, various things will happen at the end of each round and also when we are moving from one epoch to the next. But again, I will explain the game as I go. As there is no other player, I'm always the starting player of the game. So it's only me who's taking his turns. And the way how these turns basically work is you have to either take one of these action markers here. There are basically always available action markers printed here on the board. They are typically more expensive either in respect to money or in respect to time, or both. In some of the cases the market action is always available, or tax collector action that is. In a lot of these other areas you see there are only 2 markers here for the navigation action available. In a 3 to 4 player game you have more or less all of them available, but then you are competing with other players for these. So once these are gone, they are gone. Again, other than these pre-printed ones here. And the, let's say the main currency in this game is time, are these hourglasses here. So they either 1 or 2, sometimes they even need 3 of these hourglasses here, which you have to place on your player board here. And once this is full, then you have to pass, and you can't also pass before your turn is over. But typically there's always something that you can do. There is usually no real thing for you to pass early in this game, quite honestly. And again, I will explain you the rules as I go. This is also one thing. You start with 2 of these hourglasses on your board. In, let's say, the more advanced setup, which we are playing right now, you get to choose if you want a double-sided one, so basically a 2 on one stone, or if you want to take 1 single one. So again, there are pros and cons for both of them. In this case, I decided to go with 1 double hourglass, which is definitely, let's say, tougher to get rid of. So basically they stick with you 1 round longer, but we have 1 space more to use for this first round of the game. And for me, this seems reasonable. So what are we going to do first? Honestly, one of the first things that I wanted to do is to build this catapult here. I'm really a big fan of this minimalistic artwork, this ancient, antique kind of look and feel. I really like that a lot. And this is also the main reason why I have pre-trained my population. So we have 2 nobles, 1 warrior, and I think this is a scholar, might be incorrect, but you get the idea. And in order to build a card, to basically play a card, you have to have all of these prerequisites. This is a prerequisite, so I have to have a town or control of an area with one of these trade backs here. In this case, I only quote-unquote need the, let's say, population trained accordingly. And right now, that's the thing. It comes with a cool bonus, but I think this might be the first thing to focus on. So with my first action, I am going to build. Right now we still have a stone here, which means we can use it if both of these would be gone. So let's say I want to build 3 things in one given round. Then I have to take these 2, and then I also have to go for this one. But that's not really likely, quite honestly. At least not early game. Maybe later on could make sense. But in this case, we will either go for this one, which costs us a little bit less time, but costs us money. So 3 coins plus 1 time. Or it's free here, but we need to spend more time on this. I think right now, money-wise, we are in an okay shape. So I will spend those 3, I believe, exactly. So I spend 5. I start with 20, by the way. I get 2 back. And I grab this marker here, which I also have to place onto my player board here. So it's not just hourglasses, it's also the actions that you are taking. Some of these actions later on throughout the game don't require you to place any of these tokens, but still hourglasses usually. So in this case, because it's only 1 hourglass, we can take 1 hourglass. If this would now show 2 hourglasses, like this one here, I could then decide again if I want to place 2 single ones or 1 double of those. Again, that's up to me. In this case, it was fairly easy to decide because it was only 1. But you already see I only have 4 more slots here, unless I'm somehow able to remove one of those blockers here, which possible but difficult, at least for now. We have a card for that, but it's still not easy to get there. Anyway, we have now paid for the action, again, time and money. So we are now building one of those cards. And again, I already walked you through. We are going to build the catapult. Again, We have 2 nobles, we have 1 warrior, and we have the 1 scholar. Nicely done. So we are allowed to play this card. We are placing this basically next to our player board somewhere, and then we get some bonuses. First of all, we are triggering maybe a potential bonus ability. In this one, we are not scoring any immediate points, but that's okay. We are getting this bonus, which allows me to send up to 4 of my pioneers here, these discs, onto a city or a province. Right now I can't send it to a province. I will come to that in a second. So we have to go for a polis, which basically belongs to this, I think, I don't know what it is, this eye symbol here. And because I already started 2 pioneers here in Millet, I think I'm going to place those guys in here. In theory, I'm making a big mess here. Sorry for that. In theory, I do have enough pioneers in that city to take over control. Unfortunately, you can't do that with this particular action. You have to go through a navigation action, but I'm relatively certain we will come to that, and then I can do all kind of crazy stuff. So once we get to the navigation action, we will also be able to do that. Right now, this is more or less a preparational turn. It's still worth it. It's not all, because next I'm going for some so-called, I think, synergy points. You can refer to those. So now I'm choosing one of these icons here, and in this case it doesn't really matter because it's the first one. So I could go for the helmet, and for each helmet I would see now I would gain 1 point. If I would play for the next card, for example, the trading post here, let's say everything is legal, then I would trigger the synergy again. And again, I would be choosing the helmet in this case, because then I would be scoring 2 additional bonus points. And that's the main way how you score an awful lot of points through these cards, and oftentimes also through these synergies. This can be really, really huge, but at least we were able to score our very first point. 69 points more to go. But okay, this was our very first action of the game. Normally it would be now the turn of another player, so we would be fighting over these actions. We would be fighting over the training markers and maybe also over these cards. In this case, I'm more or less alone. There will be effects at the end of each round, which will change a lot of these things. So you see these gray cubes here. These will tell me if I don't take these cards, the game will take these away from me. Similarly here for these training markers up here. If I'm not doing anything with those, then the game will mess with those. So more or less again simulating another player to some extent at least. Anyway, it's my turn next. We still have 4 more spaces on our board, and we still have some more money left. We have 17 more. Okay, that's not too terrible. Okay, for my next action, I think I'm going for the navigation. This doesn't cost me any immediate time, so that's at least a small relief, but I have to spend money for that. So again, I will spend 5 coins, getting 1 back. I still have to place this marker onto my board, so it's still costing time to some extent. But now I'm allowed to take again 4 of these tokens here, and I'm allowed to place them to a location where I already have either other cities or other pioneers. In this case, the only, let's say, area where I'm in, or territory, it's here in Millet. So that's fully legal. I can do that. And now, after I have placed or deployed my pioneers from this one here, the next step would be to move. I get as many movement steps as I was allowed to place pioneers here on the board. So in this case, it's 4. And I think I am going to use all 4 of my steps to move these folks up here to Troya. Next step would be to check for control and build cities. Right now I am in control because I have at least 2 pioneers in these areas. This is something I already had control because that happened during setup. And you have to have more than everybody else in this case. Right now the areas are empty, so I'm fully allowed to do that. Next, I can now build cities. And in order to build a city, you need to have 6 pioneers in any given area. So I can't go to Troya, but I can build one in Millet here. So these 6 pioneers come back to my reserve. I will place my city in here. which means I am now in control of Millet. No one else can take this away from me. Other folks can still go there, but again, it's a very peaceful game. At least this base game. There could be other scenarios where it's maybe not so peaceful. I really haven't checked. But in this case, I have built a city. If basically Troya would also have 6, I would have been allowed to build both of these cities at the same time, but I was able to build my very first city. And one of the, let's say, 3 bonus markers here says have all 6 cities on the board. I only have 6 cities. Once the 6th city is built, I will score the 8 point, and unless this marker is no longer here. So if I do that at whatever during round 5, for example, round 6, then I would be only scoring 4 points for that. It still counts for my task, and again, one of my tasks is to have 2 of these bonus markers. After you have built your, and we're still not done yet, after you have built your cities, or the city in this case, you will now score or trigger all the abilities from the cities in the same regions. So in this case, we are in Millet. The bonus marker here gives me one of these stones, which I can now place onto the Oracle section here on my player board. And the Oracle is a very cool one, which you can take during your turn as a, let's call it, free action. You can expand these stones here to retrain up to 2 of your population, which can be extremely versatile in this case. But because I control more territories in the same region, I can also trigger other cities I control. So let's say if I would also have a city here in Sinope, I would be also placing one of these cubes on my temple track accordingly. Alternatively, because I am controlling Troya, it's not a city, but I'm still in control, I can now decide to remove one of these pioneers to trigger that action here as well. And I think because there is still one more action left which I can take, I am inclined to do so, because it will immediately score me 2 more points. Let's do that. So we are removing this guy. I'm still in control, and I would still be in control even if there would be only 1 left, as long as I still have more than any other player. So if there was someone in the same area with 4 pioneers, they would take over control at this point in time. But this didn't happen. And again, the bonus of Troya, it grants me 2 more bonus points. Nicely done. 67 more to go. Okay, back to me. Again, it's only back to me. We have 3 more slots available. We still have some money left. So we either are training next, or we are going to buy a card, because we will be losing some cards if we don't take care of those. So at the end of this round, this, and this card will simply be removed from the game. So I really have to spend a second, mainly off camera, I guess, to more or less assess the situation down here. If there is a particular card which I desperately need, or if I say I can let it slide and maybe go for more cards next round. But I am particularly interested in the cards that show these helmet symbols here. Again, getting those synergy points I explained to you. So if I would really be willing to spend $6 here, 6 coins, and this is how this works. This is the architect action. I could basically get 2 cards from here down to the left. So these 2 cards do have the helmet symbol, and they're also not terrible. This one here is particularly nice because it doubles the tax collector action. This is extremely huge. Similarly, the port here, which gives you regular income at the end of each round, basically 2 for each of these scholars. So these are not terrible. This is really a nice one. I want this here for sure, and because I'm spending some money, 6 money, I think I might really want to go for both. I can't really build them both right now, I believe. Yeah, that's really a bummer. I think I will be able to build this card relatively easily, actually, and I think that's what I want to do. So should I go for those 2 cards? This one is not extremely huge, but it will also help me with my other card, because I need the merchant to build there anyway. And yeah, getting some extra points here is never a bad thing. This is an immediate 1 point, but here we get another scholar. That's really nice. So this works well together with this one. So yes, okay, I have talked myself into that. So I'm going to take the architect action. The architect action cost me 6 coins, and I never happen to have the exact number. That's really an interesting coinage value, because we have a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, but the money only comes with 1, 5s and 10s. You're always exchanging stuff, but I'm already down to only 7 coins. So we have to place this onto our player board together with 1 hourglass. We have spent the money already, and this allows me now to buy cards. And again, we have to check what were we allowed to purchase. We always have to pay this amount of money. Doesn't matter which cards we buy in the end. Of course, we can't go above it, but if you spend lower than that, that's basically on us. So we have 6, and then we are looking at these numbers. So for 6, for example, I could buy all 3 of these cards if I would be interested in those. They're not terrible, and the altar is something I could build relatively easily, because I already have, let's say, control in one of these oracle regions here. But or we could go for the 6 here, which would allow me to buy 2 cards basically from here down to the left. And again, that was the ultimate idea. So we are buying the tenement. And which one as well? Again, I wanted to go for those. I could now make a case to say, let's for once go for this, but I think we are not really prepared in respect to our population. So I think I will stick to the port here. So yeah, these 2 cards will be purchased, and yeah, there are some penalties for cards in your hand. At the end of the game, you can still try to build those, more or less not really for free, but if you happen to meet the requirements, you get half of the victory points. If you can't, then you lose half of those victory points. So this can be pretty brutal. And at the end of each round, every card that you have over free will basically place more hourglasses onto your player board. That's really something that you want to avoid. But okay, everything else will now slide down. Yeah, which means those cards will be gone. We are bringing out more cards here. So we have the well, and again, we have removed 6 cards from the deck. And I knew in theory 4 of those, because I was allowed to check, but 2 cards were removed randomly. And here we have the Scriptorium. Yeah, definitely nice cards. These are relatively easy to build, these cards, and they still give you an awful lot of victory points through those synergy symbols up here. So really don't ignore those. Last time I played, I really scored an awful lot of points alone from these synergies. But that was my architect action. I still have 1 more space I can't pass, but again, typically you don't want to pass. I don't have any actions on my card, so there are later on cards that also give you free actions, which don't require you to play stones, only hourglasses, and typically also some money. I don't have any of those, unfortunately. So I think the only other thing left to do is one of these pre-printed tax collectors here. So I can now take 1 hourglass. Again, there is no action stone. That this is an action that's always available. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So for 1 hourglass, I get 4 coins. For 2 hourglasses, or 1 double hourglass, in this case, I would have to go for a double hourglass. I only have 1 more space left. I would gain 8 coins. But I think I will, let's go easy. We are placing 1 of these hourglasses here, and this allows me to grab 4 coins back. So again, I get a 5, giving 1 in return. So at least we do have some more cash available, which we need to train next round. Definitely something that we would have to do. And I think this is now the end of our round. We can't take any more actions. Now we have to pass. Again, this is a little bit asymmetric. Some other players in a 3-4 player game could still have more spaces because they have decided to take more doubles, or they already would have removed some of these blockers. Again, in this case, I am playing alone. So in this case, yeah, I have to pass. And here's a handy dandy overview for the so-called reform phase. This really works well. So if someone would have claimed the starting player marker, they would gain it now. Next, we will be removing all hourglasses. Unfortunately, we are only allowed to fully remove the hourglasses that show 1. In this case, the 2 simply will be flipped to the other side. So it will stay with us for 1 more round. All the markers here will go back to their respective places on the board. Again, there is no real competition. It's me against me in this case. we would be removing any neutral markers. That shows you're using these neutral markers to signalize that you have used whatever particular cards or cities on the board. In this case, this didn't happen, so we can skip over this. Next, step 4 allows you to activate one of the territories you control in each of the 3 regions. So we have the blue region, the purple region down here, we have the yellow region. You can just see that here, believe me, but it's only one territory per region. So in this case, we get to decide if we want to activate Millet or Troya again. Again, if we would be activating Troya again, because there's no city from us, again, we would have to remove one of these markers. But I think in this case, I want the Oracle disc here anyway, or rather cube, that is. So we can now retrain up to 4 times. And this is really something that you can do. You can train then back and forth. So this is very, very versatile action here. The temple gives you more or less a virtual upgrade for, especially when you want to build a card. Also extremely powerful, but this helps a little bit more if you happen to have cards that work well together, basically. And if you happen to have 3 or more of cubes here on these 2 tracks, doesn't matter where they are, you can expend 3 cubes to immediately train one of your people. And there doesn't matter which occupations they are. So also extremely powerful. That's why I say having these cubes on your player board definitely does help for sure. Next, we will be checking our hand size. We have 3 cards, so we are not suffering any penalties here. The round track will move to round 2. I have done that off camera, and this here basically gives you an overview of what will happen at the end of the game. So you can still get half of the points for cards in your hand that you're able to play. You lose half of the points for cards you're not able to play. You get some points still for those cubes. Every 10 coins gives you 1 card. And then depending on how many hourglasses you still have left on your board, you will lose an awful lot of points. So don't let that happen. 1, maybe 2 is still okay, but beyond that, it typically starts to hurt like crazy. In the normal multiplayer game, we would now directly move into the next round. In the solo mode, there is still a little bit more to do, and I think I already explained those. All the cards that have those cubes on them will be now removed from the game. So they're really removed from the game. They don't go into the discard pile, so everything else will slide down. At the start of the next round, we will place more cubes on those. So let's bring out 3 more cards here, and there's only 1 more left anyway, so I think we should be good. But we have removed some of the cards from the game here as well. Normally you do that at the start of the round, but I think we might as well do that just yet. And one last thing to do is something that I haven't showed to you at all. So what we will do, I think these 2 were basically chosen by another player, so which means we are moving those out. They will move down, but for us, I think it really does work. They will change their relative position and will go in here. This will also happen when you take the training or teaching action yourself or any other players. In this case, again, we have simulated the actions of another player, and this works pretty well, quite honestly. I like this relatively simple mechanic to, again, simulate someone else quite well, actually. But I think that's more or less it for the end of the round. Let's do the final round of this very first epoch. Again, I'm fully reset here. The question is, do I want to take an action now to remove these blocking discs? And I think that's something I need to start working towards. In theory, I have most of the requirements of the trading post here. So now I do control a territory with one of these bag icons here, but I still need 2 of these merchants. And looking at those merchants now, I think we can't really, we could in theory afford that, quite honestly, by taking the Joker action marker. I haven't shown this to you. This is something that I believe is only available in the solo mode, and I can spend 6 coins and 2 time to basically take, I think, the training action, the architect action, and maybe even the navigation action. I have to check that. So I could in theory afford that. On the other hand, I could also go for the tenement first, because the tenement is really ultra cheap right now and would gain me some bonuses in respect to the tax collector. And I think that's what I want to do. So I will go for the training action, which is basically this one here. I have to spend 4 coins. Now I don't need change. 4 ones. Nicely done here. We also have to place 1 hourglass here. So right now that is fully okay. I will place those onto my board, and maybe let's leave this one here. This one now allows me, because I have spent 4 coins, to either take any one of these occupations and train those. So you see that here on the top row. But if I want to train twice, I have to look at the bottom row. For 2, I can only train those 2 fellas here. But I think I want 2 soldiers, and you can train the same profession twice. In theory, it would only cost me 3 coins, but the action overrides, or the price for the action overrides that price here. So any excess will be lost, unfortunately. I still think it's worth it. So we are training that soldier twice because it's the same one. All the others will now slide down, which also means the trader has become a little bit more or cheaper to train. I like that. So the soldier is now up here. Will take some time to get him back, but we got 2 trainings for that soldier here, 1 and 2. So he's now already at 3, which should be now sufficient for the tenement here. Yes, I totally like that. And then I guess with our next action, we are immediately going to build the card actually. So again, we have to spend some coins, 3. We're really broke now. We are getting 1 more time unit for that. We are going to build the tenement. Again, we have the noble, at least 1, more is fine. We have the 3 here with the soldiers, and that's basically all it takes. There are no other requirements on this card, but we will get an awful lot of stuff. No immediate victory points for that. That's kind of a bummer, but we were allowed to train our, I think it's the scholars here, could be wrong. And from now on, we have this action available to us. That's a modifier action, basically, which you trigger together with one of your other actions. So again, if I go to the tax collector, in this case, I get the tax collector twice. So that's really, really huge. Of course, we will take this card and build it next to the other card. So in theory, you only need to see what actions here are available. In this case, this was a one-time effect. It doesn't really kick in. So in this case, we just need to see the icons here. Again, I get to choose one of the icons of the newly built card. Obviously, I will go for the helmet here, and then I will score 1 point for each helmet I see right now. 1 and 2. So I'm already at 5 points here. Hooray! Okay, now we are down to 2 action slots here available. In theory, this could be my very last action, but I think if I'm somehow able now to build this trading post, this would allow me to remove this blocker here. And in theory, I could be actually able to achieve that. We have the noble, but we are lacking the 2 merchants, I believe, and yeah, we have the scholars. We do control a territory with this symbol up here in Troya or Troy, so this is fine. What am I going to do? I think I am going to spend one of my oracle markers here, that's what they are, in order to retrain up to 2 professions. I think I want to hold on to the scholar because I need this for the port. So let's not touch this scholar here, but I think I can afford to retrain a soldier to a merchant and maybe 1 noble to a merchant. I think this should be working okay. Again, I didn't really gain any more professions. I more or less moved them around a little bit, but that's how civilizations work. I'm pretty sure about that. Okay, so this was something I have done more or less free of charge. So I have all these requirements. 1 noble, 2 merchants, at least one noble here. Nice. So I think, yeah, let's stick to the plan. We are going for the building action here. This time I have to go, unfortunately, for a double, but I think it's still worth it to build this card here. We are getting 1 point immediately because we have built it, and this thing here allows me to remove one of these blockers. They immediately go away, which means I am now able to use it, and I will use it basically for the rest of the game. That's why it's so huge. Nice. Last but not least, we are going to place this card here into the same row. Again, I will choose the helmet. 1, 2, 3 more points. So we are already at 9 points. So that's really really not too shabby. But what's more important, we now have another action at our disposal here because we just unlocked this. And again, I will go for the tax collector action. Again, I already showed this to you. This comes with a 1 and a 2. I think in this case, we will still go with a 1. Normally, I would be getting 4 coins, but because we have this modifier here, which we are now going to activate once per turn, basically, we are now triggering this a second time, which means we are getting 8 coins in total instead of 4. This is really huge. This is how you do it. Nicely done. But again, that's the end of our round. Again, we will move through the I keep forgetting reform phase here. We don't care about the starting player marker. We will remove all of those. This unfortunately goes back to the starting position with a 1. These markers will go back to their respective spaces on the board, and I'm relatively certain I'm playing very, very poorly. So let's see how things go from here. We are not removing any of these cubes because we haven't used those. We are still allowed to trigger our city, 1 city per region, that is. I don't want the victory points. I think I want to stick to those fellas here. So again, I have decided to trigger Milet in this case. I could have gone for Troya, but then I would have to remove one of these Pioneer discs for 2 points. But I think I want the versatility of the Oracle. That really does help me. We will be moving the round marker here accordingly. This now allows me to remove 1 more of these blockers, so I'm even more capable next round taking more powerful action, and we are still getting rid of the cards that we haven't chosen. And there is a difference to that. You would now wonder, okay, we are now moving into Epoch 2 basically, so those cards are really removed from the game. But the remaining cards from Epoch 1, which are still here, so I think we are still refilling this, they go to a discard pile, and I am able to draft cards from the discard pile. So if I later on spend 6 or 8 coins here respectively, I can get basically up to 2 cards from any of the discard piles. So this can be extremely huge. But again, the cards that had these cubes on there, these are really out of the game for good, never to be seen again. And the same thing now applies to the training markers. So again, they will move out. So this will move down. So the merchants even got more inexpensive. I quite like that. Those go over here. Again, they will always change their relative position. We will place cubes on them, again simulating another player. And then last thing to do is to reveal new cards from the second era: irrigation, repository, barracks. So they get you more and more victory points, but of course they also cost you more, or require more and more training of your population. I mean, this makes quite sense. So we are placing the cubes here respectively. So again, they might be gone before I'm able to take those. And now we will start the next epoch, starting with round 3, and really have to start thinking about grabbing at least one of these bonus markers that are worth 8 points before they are actually, not really gone, but exchanged for the lower version ones here. But I think for today, I will call it. I will continue this playthrough in another episode, and I think in that one I should be able to complete it. It's really not an ultra long game when you play it alone. With 3 or 4 players, it's also extremely long with the base game. Depends a little bit on how, let's say, AP prone your folks are you're playing with, because a lot of things will change until it is your turn. Is the marker still available? Are the cards still available that you're aiming for? Are those training markers in the position? So there's always something that you have to reconsider when it's actually your turn. But apart from that, the game, I don't know, it's really a very, very smooth experience. I really do like that a lot. So let me know what you think. And before I forget, also a huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members. You guys are stars and amazing. Can't tell you how much I appreciate all your support. Go check out the preview page on GameFound for EPOS Gentes Game. Maybe you're watching this while the campaign is already live, then you will be able to directly back it. And at a later stage stage in time, I will consider maybe at least walking you through some of the changes in one of the scenarios. I really have to familiarize myself a little bit with those, but of course I will complete this playthrough here. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos, and until then, bye bye.